Yes, in spirit.
What happened to my?
It's funny, this guy is,
Thinking about you.
this is a termination we did.
True.
You're a mess.
Okay, that's good.
All right.
Hi, Jerry.
So yes, sir.
Oh,
Certainly, brother.
nobody's here. I guess we can go home.
Yeah, man. Remember this is you. That's right.
Jerry's
You
here.
went in unopposed. Hey, Jerry.
Yeah, we can go campaign for Mike.
And Henry.
Amen.
You and Brenda. Smooth.
It is smooth.
Silver tongue. Good for you all. I'm happy for you.
I still think she's better elected. I still think she's better looking than him. Can we trade? Can we make a trade?
Sure.
Just kidding.
Are we ready? Wait on you, Mr. Man.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mark David Burns.
Yeah, everybody ready? Mike's ready. Good. Okay. Okay. Turn, it's $25, $25 fine for cell phone goes off. All right. Don, you ready?
Not going to a special meeting tonight.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming this evening to our special city council meeting. Big crowd. I'm gonna ask Mr. Blake if he could do the invocation.
Absolutely, sir. Would everyone stand and
Yes, sir.
secure your phone? Dear Heavenly Father, once again, said we come to you as humble servants, ready to serve and protect the people. We ask that your blessings be upon this facility, the structure of this meeting, but most of all citizens of this great nation that you have blessed us with. We ask all these blessings in your sweet Son named Jesus. Everyone said amen.
Amen.
Amen again.
Face the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here.
Mayor Parrish,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Bovair,
Here.
Councilman Blake,
Present, ma'am.
Councilwoman Warner,
Here. Hello. Anthony.
Hey, good day, man. How you doing?
Okay, we're calling roll. City Attorney Garganese,
Present, telephonically. I'm on my way.
City Manager Takanich,
Here.
Assistant City Manager Fuhrer.
Here. Okay.
I make a motion that we approve the agenda for the special meeting of September 6, 2016.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Mr. City Manager? Shovel?
Mr. Mayor, Council, members of the public, we're here this evening at a special City Council meeting for the FY 2017 budget. This is the first public hearing. One, I want to thank the Mayor and the Council for your time, the individual meetings as well as the budget workshops we've had thus far. Again, want to thank all the directors and the managers that worked very hard to put together a budget that exercised fiscal responsibility and ensuring that the citizens' needs are being met and services will be provided in the upcoming fiscal year. So you've seen a lot of this, although we have taken out a lot of the department level because we're at a higher level now. but for the purposes and the benefit of the public that are watching this evening, as well as those in attendance, I'll go through and provide some details that I know many of you have asked either personally or collectively in meetings. I will tell you that we do have our rate consultant here this evening, Mike Burton, and Eric and Malcolm. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. And I know we received an email regarding the fire assessment, and at a point prior to the public comment, when it comes to the fire assessment, I would ask that Mr. Burton get up and make comments, so council is assured, based on the questions that were raised in the email and some of the statements, that you have a level of assurance, moving forward. So with that, tonight we're here to adopt the non-ad valorem fire assessment role and the fire protection final assessment resolution for FY 2017, adopt a tentative millage rate for fiscal year 2017, adopt a tentative budget for fiscal year 2017, and set the second public hearing, and you'll see this date several times throughout there, which is September 14th, 8 days from today. Questions already been asked. Could we do it on the 12th or the 13th, our meeting, or on the 27th? The county and the school board are having their budget hearings on those days, and by state law, we are prohibited from having our public hearings on our budgets on those same days. So 8 days from today will be the second public hearing. Keep in mind, by state law, the city must have a balanced budget by October 1st, 2016. The TRIM, the Truth in Millage process. It's 2 steps. First, we will you will adopt the fiscal year 2017 City of Cocoa tentative millage rate. Please note that the tentative millage rate, which you previously established as the maximum, cannot exceed the rate of 5.9790. That's the rate that you establish as the proposed at the maximum. You can go below, but you can't go higher. That was approved on July 12th, 2016. Then the second part of this evening is adopting the 2017 City of Cocoa tentative budget. So just to review this, so the members of the public have the benefit of knowing where the city's going, and in an effort to continually try to be transparent and accountable with the citizens' tax dollars. One, our focus in this upcoming fiscal year is community improvements and infrastructure. The 2 prior years, we spent a lot of focus and assets and resources on public safety. With utilities, we continue to work. Jack and his management staff and all the crews work hard to proactively manage the assets and undertake a fairly massive and continuing renewal and replacement program. Well, we're mentioning utilities, and when we get there, but just want to let everybody know, today we did sign an MOU with LIUNA. You'll receive an informational agenda item addressing the disparities and the inequities as it related to those critical, hard-to-fill positions. So the direction following that workshop and the executive work session culminated in today in signing the MOU with LIUNA for those 9 positions that affected 60-plus employees. So just that's kind of a sidebar note, and I want to thank Tammy and Finance and for all their work, and Jack and Ed as we worked with especially the members of LIUNA, Andy Newsom, the chief steward, and his fellow union stewards. So then, obviously, the purpose and the philosophy is we want to maintain and enhance our current levels of services that we provide to our businesses, citizens. Want to make sure we maintain control expenditures. In this year, we actually implemented zero-based budgeting for 2 departments, and we'll rotate that through. So they basically start their budget from scratch. They don't look at last year. They build their budget from scratch. So it's one way to kind of get around to true up and make sure things aren't just sitting in a line item that carry forward every year. So we meet and we went over all the line items. This year it was community services and the police department. And we already have 1 volunteer for next year, and we'll be getting another volunteer, I'm sure, after that. Enhance and diversify our revenue base straight out of our strategic plan, as well as maintaining employee benefits at reasonable levels. We did experience, higher than anticipated claims this year in our health insurance. But, you'll see later, actually, the numbers are still, we're in a better position. If you recall, this fiscal year, we went fully self-funded. And the rate that we're going to be paying is still less than had we renewed with Cigna last year. So I think it was a pretty wise decision on council's part, and I think it'll only continue to grow. We also want to make sure that we fulfill our commitment to our collective bargaining units, the fire union, the LIUNA, and the police union, PBA. And then at the end of the day, what we've talked about out of our strategic plan, which was brought forward, was to put the city on a fiscally sustainable path. So we're going to go over some of that too. A little bit of a background as it relates to that. In 2015, we retained Burton Associates, worked collaboratively with staff and their staff to develop a fiscal sustainability model. It's a proprietary interactive model that Burton Associates developed, and that was for the general fund. We used Burton Associates for our utilities. They were for our rate study and also for fire assessment. And when you look at the integration and how that affects the general fund, it made a lot of sense. It enabled us to model our expenditures and revenues over a 10-year period and make decisions today, understanding what decisions we make today, how it's going to impact us, down the road. We did contract this year with Burton and Associates to update that model, to validate prior assumptions, evaluate the current fiscal conditions, and also look at the, where we were in terms of the assumptions and the projections as it relates to the FY17 millage and fire assessment rates. This is the full screenshot. This is, if you recall, this is from with Eric and Mike Burton and their model. Again, the top bar, they originally, this goes back to 2015 when we first started this. And probably, I'll even just go really right down to the two bottom bars, or the boxes rather. The green and blue bars, those were our reserves. And as you can see, we were using our reserves to fund, the fund deficit. So we said, we need to have a reserve target of 4 months of O&M expenses. And by the year 2024, or 2025, we essentially would be in a deficit out of complete reserves. So we needed a plan for that, as well as go over to the right, you see the red and blue bar, or the graph. The red bar line represents cash out. Those are our expenses. And the blue line represented cash in. You see the variance between the two. So we had a serious structural or financial challenge to overcome. So that was the basis. Now moving into 17, it's been updated. It does demonstrate, as you recall, at the one of the workshops that we held, that the millage rate should remain unchanged over the projection period. It was updated to include the Walmart and the port property phased in, 2019 for the Walmart distribution center, and then a couple years later in 2022 for the remainder of the property, developing. It shows that, continuing to use our reserves for catalytic type projects, economic development, or, community catalytic type projects, and one-time non-recurring capital expenses. The projection, and this was done back in May, if I recall correctly, was $5.4 million, and we are on that mark in this budget today. It did demonstrate the 3% increase to the fire assessment annually. If you recall, last year, it was recommended at 5%, looking at our expenses, and then running their projections. It was recommended to decrease the percent increase from the fire assessment, which was supposed to be 5%, to 3%. And it does provide for the debt service for the fire stations. You see on the right the cash in, the cash flow model, cash in, cash out. Those red and blue lines a lot closer. But I guess largely that is in large measure due to capital. If you look at the light brown line, that is our O&M costs without capital. So you can see if we had to make some changes due to maybe a recession or some other catastrophic event that would impact us financially, we would be able to, like we did previously, but maybe in a better position to be sustainable and not place ourselves in jeopardy. And on the left, you see the reserve balances. They're spent down strategically over time, over a level 10-year period, and on catalytic projects that will induce capital investment and growth in the city to, one, enhance our tax base. So at the end of the day, we're moving in the right direction, the model showing that. And again, this is the interactive proprietary model that Burton Associates prepared working with staff, and we're very appreciative because we think it's an amazing decision tool, and we thank them for their efforts for that. Just a history in the ad valorem tax base. As you know, fiscal year 2008 was our high mark, our $1.178 billion. And then the recession took effect, and you can see to the right the drastic reduction in the tax base. Even 9 years later, we are still not, we're not even close. We're getting there. But $857 million is this year's estimated final taxable, valuation, valuation for the city, which is a 4.8% increase, which is, for the city, it's been very good. The 4.7 from last year actually reduced after the Value Adjustment Board, but we had some positive growth in some areas. We were talking about population going up to 18,833, a growth of 520 residents in 1 year. It's pretty significant for our city. This is tying it together, valuation, millage, revenue, ad valorem revenue. You can see the change over time. In the current fiscal year that we're in, $817 million of valuation, maintaining the millage rate of 5.9790, which is we've maintained for the last 2 years, which we reduced in 14 down to the 5.9790. And it's, it yielded, the difference was about $179,000 or 4.2% to the budget. The trim options that you have, again, you already know the adopted rate for this year is 5.9790 based on the $818.4 million valuation base. The current rate proposed and which was the maximum that you set as a proposed maximum, and staff is recommending again, is 5.9790 based on the $857.3 million valuation. That would yield, and keep in mind, we have to budget by state law at 95% of that. So that would yield $4.8 million, roughly $221,000 more this year. Staff believes it's critical to maintain course, as we put the city on a fiscally sustainable path, and adopting the current millage rate will enable us to do that. You do see the rollback rate, 5.8759, which would yield $137,040, and it'd bring in $4.7 million. Majority rate is not, it's not even open for discussion because you adopted a preliminary rate of 5.9790 as your maximum. So obviously the question we get a lot, and I know you get a lot, is, well, what does this mean to the single-family property owner? Take the single-family homeowner that has homestead, $100,000 house with the $50,000 of homestead. For that person, in the current fiscal year for city taxes, and the reason why I have city taxes because when you say city taxes, think of the city services that you receive, because we are, in the trenches of providing the services to our residents. So currently it's $299, and it would go up to $303. So it's about a $4 increase for a $100,000 home after homestead exemption. $150,000 home after homestead exemption, you're looking at about a $6. That's an annual increase, not monthly, just $6 a year in taxes for the city. $200,000 go up $8. $300,000 go up $12. More than a majority, close to probably over about 2/3 of our homes are less than $50,000. So you look, if it's at $50,000 less the $25,000 exemption, you might be looking about $1.50, $2 or so actual increase in their property taxes for next year. Keep in mind, we are only able, the Save Our Homes as provided in the statutes, limits the annual increase in homesteaded exempt properties to either 3% or the CPI. Obviously, the CPI is down much less than the 3%. So for 2016, it's 0.7%, despite the fact that the city has an overall 4.8% increase in value. Where do we compare? This is a question you all ask, and I think a lot of citizens want to know, well, where do we compare to other municipalities in terms of our ad valorem taxes or our property taxes? We rank number 7th. We have for a while. And you can see here, And this is based on, these rankings are based on the proposed rates for all of our respective or sister jurisdictions. And you can see there is one community that is actually proposing a pretty sizable tax increase over its current tax rate, let alone the rollback rate, and others are maintained, Cocoa Beach, number 8. And so another year or two, maybe we'll be number 8, and they'll be number 7.
Is that the new rate for this year for all of them?
Yeah, that's their current proposed rate. They're all going through
Yeah.
the same process right now. But as you can see, pretty much every community is going above their rollback rate or maintaining their current rate. So it just, I mean, Melbourne, again, much larger city, much larger tax base. But you can see, even Rockledge, dropping a little bit, but going above the rollback rate. So again, as I mentioned earlier, the staff proposed FY17 millage rate at 5.9790 would yield approximately $4.8 million. It's about $221,000 for the fiscal year 2017 budget. Reminder, once again, this is the first public hearing. The second public hearing is on September 14th, next week, 6 o'clock, right here at City Hall. So, just want to some formalities, get them out of the way. The City of Cocoa is a taxing authority. The rollback rate is 5.8759 mils. The rollback rate is a 0% increase. The millage rate to be proposed to be levied is 5.9790. The millage rate at 5.9790 does represent a tax increase of 1.75%, while you over the current rollback rate. While you're keeping the millage rate the same, it does represent a tax increase. And I think I emphasized that before. So,
That's because the property value went up.
the valuations went up,
yeah.
that's correct. So at this point, it's what I'd like to do before we move to the public comment is I'd like to, prior to engaging or asking City Council questions and comments, is to invite Mike Burton to come up, because the next order of business would be to approve the final assessment resolution, the non-ad valorem assessment role for the fire protection. That would be public hearing item number 1. I have one presentation that covers all 3. I thought you might like that instead of having 3 separate presentations. Yep. So with that, I'll invite Mike up, and he can address the email and in terms of the propriety and the validity of the fire assessment. Mr. Mike Burton.
Mike?
Thank you, John. I've asked Eric to come up with me. This is Eric Van Mulson. I'm Mike Burton, president.
Never saw a guy before.
You're starting to look like staff.
So it's a pleasure to be here. We had a email that was forwarded by the city manager from a citizen who expressed some concerns. One was about the notices, and Eric has checked the rolls, and the gentleman who did raise the issue for the fire assessment, he was not required to be noticed. Is that correct?
Right.
Why don't you explain the notice situation?
There are a couple cases that determine when a notice is required to be sent for fire assessments. One is when you go above your currently adopted maximum rate, and your currently adopted maximum rate is well beyond what you're adopting here tonight. The other is if you had a change in methodology or if the property is new annexed into the city. You had a last mail out the prior year, last year, when you adopted an update to your methodology for the entire assessment, and the report that is it's all based on was delivered, and the entire roll is based upon that study. All the property owners received that notice, including the property owner in question here that had the email. He was not required to be noticed this year because the rates aren't going above his maximum notice assessment. He also was noticed on the water and sewer bill for his the rate adoption hearing for that as well, and I believe that was part of the concern.
And that may be some confusion on that, is the state statute requires that you notice in the water and sewer bill, not a first-class mail notice like the fire assessment is. So that was done. We validated that with your staff, so those 2 issues are taken care of. He also questioned the special benefit finding for a fire assessment, and that's been well settled in cases before the Florida Supreme Court for a number of years. And in the report that we issued last year, where it was a complete methodology change. We referenced two cases. One is Fire District Number 1 of Polk County versus Jenkins, and the other is Desiderio Corporation versus the City of Boynton Beach. And in both of those cases, the Florida Supreme Court, or the Florida courts, some of those may have been appellate courts, they've validated it, fire assessments, fire service provides a special benefit to real property. So that's been well settled in the courts. And that special benefit is the availability of the fire service, it's the ability to get insurance, and it's a number of things that we delineated in the report that he questioned, and all of those for many years have been accepted as special benefits that the fire assessment does receive. It isn't just what we decided here, it's been decided in numerous cases before us. And I believe that was all that was brought up. So, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
No, I think part of his confusion came from the fact that he did get a notice one year
Yeah.
and didn't get a notice the next year.
Yeah.
And he just assumed it was something that should come out every year. So I think that was, in a city of 18,000 people, if only one person noticed that they didn't get a notice this year, that's,
And to his credit, you had gone through numerous methodology changes in the past few years, so he's probably used to seeing these notices and seeing this, oh no, a new fire assessment hearing's coming up. So it's just the fact that this year you're finally kind of kicking down the road on the steady state plan.
Yeah.
You didn't have to do the
Actually,
notices. And
you had it noticed the year before, too, because that's when you adopted the availability method the first time. And then you changed the method on the vacant properties to have a different multiplier last year, so you had to notice again. So
I think he's probably only been a resident for about 3 years, so he's probably had a notice every year he's been here.
Yeah.
So that was probably where the confusion came in for him, yeah.
Well, also, the fire assessment hearing is advertised in the newspaper regardless. There are different tiers of advertisement, and as Mike's group indicated, mail notices only go out under certain circumstances, but the publication in the newspaper is published annually.
Yeah.
And it's a sizable display ad, too.
Yeah.
That we spend a lot of money for, yes.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
a lot of
Yes,
a lot of the cities that, well, not you, sir, but other cities that use different organizations for their, for their accounting and for their planning, and kind of explain to us and for the audience out there that your model that you use and how, it's, I mean, for us, I know for John and for the policymakers here that don't look at this every day, I mean, it's a great guide. It's almost live for me.
Well, it is. We've adopted a number of years ago an interactive modeling process, recognizing that it's very difficult for you to assimilate all the data that's coming at you, particularly in tabular form and spreadsheets. We deal with this every day, and I think if you give either one of us a spreadsheet, our eyes will tend to glaze over to a series of schedules. So we developed this interactive technology where we can change things on the fly, and you can see graphically the results as the city manager shows you.
Right, and you can run trials like, hey, if you
Absolutely.
keep your millage rate at this,
Yeah.
you can see the telemetry.
And it's not pre-programmed, it's all in there.
Right.
And although we may have set some scenarios, anybody, you or anybody in the audience could say, well, what if growth was different? Or what if we had a different escalation rate on payroll? Or what, and we can change it and you can see it right then. So the good thing about it is,
For us, it's a huge advantage.
It's a huge
tool.
yeah, well, thank you very much. I think it's a big advantage because in the better part of a morning or an afternoon, sitting with staff or with you, we can work you towards a solution. We don't have to say, well, we can test that and we'll get with you next week. We don't ever say that.
Right.
So that's really been, and it started off with the utilities and water and sewer. Then about 4 or 5 years ago, we developed the general fund model, and then we started integrating that with the water and sewer and then with the fire assessment model too, because we have it in all of those. And so you are one of three or 4 cities that have availed yourself of that full integration. And everywhere we've done it, it's been an incredibly powerful tool for the decision makers to feel confident that they're really seeing what the answers are going to be.
Which, and how you need to handle it, or,
Well, it not only makes the decision-making easier, because we can see how all of our decisions are going to affect not only this year's budget, but what's going to happen 10 years down the road. But for me, that's the biggest thing, is that my first go-round on council, I felt like we were planning for this year and next year and not a lot further down the road because we never knew what was going to happen.
Right.
And we didn't have any way of quickly going, okay, well, if this happens,
What will happen?
this
Yeah, this
is
gives us a
what
lot
the
more
result's going to be.
confidence.
This has made the whole process just so much easier. It's unbelievable.
Well, that's great. We really appreciate your perspective on it. You know, Peter Drucker, the management scholar, has a quote that says, "Long-range planning is not concerned about future decisions, but rather the future of current decisions." And that's just what you
Yeah,
described.
That's-
exactly, yeah. Yeah, because it was almost impossible to know
Yeah.
that, 10 years ago, what the decisions we made today,
Yeah.
what effect they were going to have this year on the city, and now we can see that.
You can
That's
see it.
huge.
And we've had some people say, well, how do you know what's going to happen out 10 years? Well, we don't really. I mean, the first 5 years is really a planning period. The next 5 years is really a projection. But what we're looking that far out for is to see, is there anything that's going to be a major issue you're going to have to deal with in that time period? Like for the fire assessment, if you were going to have to fund a couple of stations out in that time period, that would be a big deal. We'd like to know about it. And John showed you the graph on the general fund that showed the red bar in the out years was still slightly above the blue bar, and it was capital. But that's a long ways out, and a lot of things can happen differently. Valuations could get better.
I mean-
You don't need to plan for a total solution 10 years out, but
No.
it's good to see that you're within the framework of having one.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, in a real simple way to look at it is from day one, when all this came on board in end of 12, was, growing the city, to the point where we're getting a lot more industry and, business and residents. And I mean, it's happening. And I want to remind people out there, that a few years ago, we didn't raise water rates because he didn't see the need because of Mike's model that you look at. And for me, it makes it a lot easier. I can sleep at night knowing that things are going the right way.
Thank you.
But, again, it's, people ask me questions the other way around, like, why would you consider raising water rates? Well, we know exactly where we're at and how we're having to, correct problems and
Repair and replace.
right,
What you got to do, yeah. If you
And,
don't do it.
and just to remind everybody here, I'm probably going to get corrected, but Flint, Michigan tried to save $100,000, and look what happened.
Yeah.
And we are hell-bent on having the best water and the best utility system in the nation, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to keep, from our angle, we're not going to shortchange.
Yeah.
We're going to make sure that everybody's taken care of and our water's safe, as an example.
One last comment, I will have to say it's a tool, and a tool is only as good as how you use it.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay? It really
That's
is. And and what's really key to the success here is the collaboration we've had with your city staff and your city manager particularly. On the general fund model, we showed those reserves, and your city manager said, well, that gives us the ability to fund these catalytic projects that can enhance our property values. And I fully believe that's what's going to happen in those out years, is you're going to have increases in property value that'll take care of those things. But without that, I don't know that we could have had the vision that you could afford to fund those catalytic projects. And so
Exactly.
that was the good thing.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that tool makes us proactive in making our decisions. We are accurate.
Yep.
And to be accurate, predicting the future, speaks volumes. And my thing is proper preparation promotes positive productivity. Yes, ma'am, yes, sir. We couldn't help what happened last week at SpaceX with the pad. But I'm sure they got a tool similar to what we have
Yeah.
that's comparable to prepare for such events
That's true.
like that.
Yep.
So I do support this, and I thank you for your collaboration and communication.
Thank you.
I mean,
And
you're-
cooperation with us.
Thank you, Councilman. And to
You're-
your point, one of the other good things you've done is you've done this 2 or 3 years in a row, and then you can see that just what you're saying. You won't be necessarily perfectly accurate every year, but you can make adjustments and course corrections so that you stay on course, and that's really another big benefit of
Yeah.
how you've used the
That's
tool.
a
so,
huge advantage.
yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Your model is. It's
Good
just-
stewards of the tax dollars.
There you go.
And let me say one other thing with the fire assessment. You remember our good cohort Tyler stated that we told the people up front, and we telling them up front because they wanted the trucks, they wanted the improvement. Here's what it's going to take. And we laid the scenario out, and by God, here we are now.
Yep.
So
Well, thank you for
it
your,
works.
Thank you.
job.
Appreciate you
Thank
being
you.
here,
Thank you,
too.
John,
Thank
too,
you.
for
Thank you,
organizing
John.
that.
Have a good
Thank you,
night.
Mike. Thank you.
Okay, I'm done.
I know Councilman Bover was holding up, but in your agenda packet is a copy of the legal advertisement that was placed in the floor today on the notice of the hearing to adopt the non-ad valorem fire protection assessment rates, and it was advertised on the local, the utility bills, the water bill. So the first part, the requested action, and then I'll turn it over to council for questions and then open it to public comment, is to, again, approve the final assessment resolution and the non-ad valorem assessment roll for the fire protection assessment for FY 2017, and that would be corresponding with your agenda. Public hearing, item number 1.
Item number 2-1 or item number 3-1?
3-1.
Thank you. Now, if we decide to do the 5.970, we can, at the next meeting, reduce it even to the rollback rate of whatever, 5.8, whatever it is, if we decide to do it that way. But can you go back one more screen, sir? I know what you're saying.
5.8759.
If we went to the 5.8, I mean, we can do the 790. But if we wanted to do the rollback rate, and the only reason why it is a tax increase because the property values went up, we kept that same millage rate, and you gave us the breakdown of a house under 50,000, a $3 or $4 increase, et cetera, et cetera. Could you bring that screen up again just for the public? I just want to make sure, you know, I'm a visual person. 50,000 from $299 to $303, $4 increase, 150, 598 to 604, $6 increase, so it's 468.
That's not bad for the service they're getting.
No,
And I don't think anybody would have anything to complain about.
I mean, it's transparent, accountability, self-sustaining.
Johnny,
It's not, certainly not trying to be insensitive to the taxpayers' concern that local government is
Yeah, but the most
responsible
increase is only
and good
$12.
stewards.
You're not talking 120 here or.
At $300,000, at $1,500 a year, I mean, think how much, collectively a person spends in a year for a cell phone, for cable. And look at all the essential services, municipal services that the city provides to our citizens and our businesses.
it's true. Johnny, are you done?
Yes.
So we're gonna move. I'm gonna close this to the council. Go to the public on public hearing number 1. Anybody in the audience want to speak on this issue, on the fire assessment? Fire department? Just joke. Okay. Close it to the public, bring it back to the council. How you want to handle this?
Yeah.
We're doing each item as a separate motion, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Where's the, I can't find the,
Wording?
It's on I put it back up on the screen, the requested action.
yeah, but there's no
It's
resolution number.
It's resolution
No resolution for the fire assessment?
Yeah, Resolution 2016-96, Councilman. Was inserted.
Yeah, it's not-
2016-96 is the resolution number?
Yes,
Okay.
in the agenda package. It's not on the slide that you're looking
Okay.
at.
Hold on.
(2016-96), you said?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we need a motion there, right? I make a motion that we approve resolution number 2016-96 for the fire assessment.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, Council, the second item, which is a public hearing, item number 3-2A, is the tentatively adopting the proposed millage rate. As Councilman Blake pointed out, it's currently 5.9790, which is the current one. The requested action is to approve resolution number 2016-92, tentatively adopting a proposed millage rate of 5.9790 for for the City of Cocoa for the fiscal year commencing on October 1st, 2016, and ending on September 30th, 2017. Council return it to the mayor and council.
Okay, I'm going to close it to the council, bring this to the public. And would anybody like to speak on the millage rate, make any comments? Okay, close it to the public, bring it back to council. How do you want to?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve Resolution 2016-92, tentatively adopting the proposed millage rate of 5.9790 for the City of Cocoa for the fiscal year commencing on October 1st, 2016, ending September 30th, 2017.
Second.
Okay, second, Mike. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Very good. John? Go ahead.
Okay, the final part of this evening is to review the fiscal 2017 tentative budget and the CIP, or the capital budget,
Thank you, Mr. Burton.
Thank you.
which is public hearing item number 2B. Again, we've been through this through 2 workshops. The last workshop, we presented in more details by department. This is going to be just by fund and category. So we'll start off with the revenues and provide some historical analysis for those trends, so you can see what the trend line is looking like. Obviously, the orange is the general fund, and you can see it peaked in 2014, and then in the current budget for 2016 is there, and then you can see kind of tapering down a little bit, and the same for the utility system, which is the blue, and it kind of has that arc. So it's starting to come down a little bit in terms of revenues. And then as you see for the light green is the stormwater fund. It's really small, and it is really small. It's only about $3 million, and it's been relatively just minor increases over the years. In terms of the general fund revenue by funding source, everybody wants to know, well, what percent of our property taxes, or what percent of taxes make up or at least are part of our budget. 19% of our taxes ad valorem, utilities, communication service tax, come from taxes, and which probably, what do we say, it's about, I want to say it's about 13%, 12% of that of our total budget comes from property taxes. The other larger categories, charges for services, that's 30.1%. That's our water billing, garbage collection, cultural recreation fees, and then you have other non-revenue. Included in that $11.3 million is $8 million of debt proceeds for our fire stations. So, absent that $8 million, you'd be looking at about a $29 million budget. So there's $8 million for the upcoming year in debt proceeds. And then there's also revenues that we're using from the reserves or the unassigned fund balance for those catalytic projects.
So 8 minus the 37, is that where you come with the 29?
Yes,
whatever?
correct.
Okay, just want to make sure.
So the revenue trends, this is by the individual revenue sources, taxes being blue, or the gray being other permits and fees. And you'll notice intergovernmental orange, and then charges for services. Charges for services was a little bit higher in 11 through about 14, and then with the change with the way we record the fire assessment in terms of the state chart of accounts, it changed, and it's now, that's why you see the gray bar where it says other permits and fees. The fire assessment revenues are actually recorded there, but you see a corresponding, there's an increase, but then you see the dip in the charges for services. So that just kind of gives you, those actuals are all based on audited numbers with the exception of 2016, which is the budget. For the water sewer fund, charges for services for water, sewer, and reuse, represents $52.1 million. It's 68% of the budget. 29.4% is use of reserves, as well as the anticipation of this year for several years due to, I think, good project management and fiscal responsibility on Jack and the utility staff, is we've not had to go out to the market, but this may be the year that we have to go out to the market in order to we were projected to go to the market a couple times, but
Yeah.
again, we've not had to do that, but this may be the year that we have to. And in the budget, you'll notice there's, I believe it's $20 million that, is it 20? For debt proceeds, it's 20, right? It's close to $20 million for debt, potentially for the utility system. It's a $76.6 million budget. You're going to see a little bit later how that is a decrease from the last year's $87 million. The Stormwater Fund, revenue by funding type, as I mentioned, it's a very comparison to the others. It's about $2.8 million. Half of it's from charges for services, stormwater fees, and then the reserves that they have for projects. There's also some grant income that we're getting this year from St. John's River Water Management District for some projects. So now expenses, the expense side of the equation. Again, just will think larger by the budget in terms of not getting into the details of each individual department. The general fund, you're looking at a $37 million budget this year compared to the $40 million budget that we have this year. Both of those budgets represent $8 million for the fire stations. So that will go down after those expenses are incurred. Literally no change in the debt service funds for either general fund or water service. Debt service fund, you're seeing the special services fund, the increase. That represents the expenses related to the CRAs, CDBG, home, SHIP, police confiscation. It's all those special revenue funds. And then you see the self-insurance. I mean, despite us having a higher than anticipated year in claims, you're still seeing a 12% reduction. I did mention, I kind of skipped over it, but the water sewer fund going from almost $88 million down to $76 million. Overall, we're going from a $159.1 million budget to a $143.9 million budget, which represents a 9.6% decrease from the amended 2016 budget to the proposed 2017 budget. This is just by department, individually. That's the general fund from council to public works. This current year, 40.2, to the upcoming year, $37 million. And then these are by category. I usually try to focus on the graphs here because they help, they're more illustrative. You want me to go back?
Yeah, I'm just gonna, make the point about council. That's all.
Council is doing an excellent job at managing their budget.
That's all I want to know.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, who controls our budget?
So the general fund, as you know, we talk about this every year, the general fund is really personnel and employee dependent, in terms of the wages and benefits versus the utilities, the water sewer, and the stormwater fund that are capital, oriented and operating. So you see 56.5% of the general fund is from wages and benefits, 26% operating, and about 9.4% capital, and then a smaller other about 6.6%. As you go to the general fund expenditure trends, everything up to 2015 on that chart is audited numbers. I do estimate, I'll be surprised, but I do believe when the audit comes in, we're certainly hopeful we're back on the April schedule as long as the state gets the FRS audit, completed. Like if you recall, they held us up this time, but I think when you see the 2016 actuals, I think it's going to be closer in line to where we were in 2014. So you'll see a dip. That's based on our budget, but I think due to the monitoring of spending. And
What's the reason for that, you think?
Well, I think one, the capital. We were hoping, to be honest, to go to the market in September for the fire assessment bonds. We're going in October.
Right.
So we were planning on starting that. You got to have that money on before you can issue a purchase order. You have to have the revenue to back it up.
Right.
So therefore, we had projected in the expenses for this current fiscal year that $40 million was $8 million for the fire stations. Now we have expended some of those funds because if you recall, we dedicated about $2 million, and I think was about $1.3 million between land, engineering, surveys, site assessments, and things of that nature in support of the fire stations. So-
All three places?
It's, well, yeah, because we purchased 2 pieces of land, correct, and then we had the site assessment. Yes, sir.
Yeah, the one on 524 and the property on Clear Lake,
Correct.
the one over here we own.
Well, actually, the Cocoa CRA owns it, and the city will be essentially acquiring that property from the Cocoa CRA, but with that, the city will be forgiven the note that the city borrowed, or, the Cocoa CRA had a deferred note on that in terms of they have not yet started making debt service payments on that. So that'll be forgiven. So there'll be an adjustment actually on the fund balance as a result of that transaction, but we don't think it'll affect us, substantially. The water sewer fund, it's an enterprise fund, so it's by the 8 divisions you have here. You can see the WFO water collections, 36.8% increase. This is where, when the customers say, well, what are you doing to improve our service? You are hiring 20 new people in water field ops to make sure we continue on that proactive, approach to, exercising valves, backflow prevention, and just proactively out there, managing all of our assets. There's been a lot of work that Jack and Chris Collier and their team have done in terms of assessing the infrastructure and identifying and prioritizing where repairs and maintenance are needed so we can avoid, the I don't want to say the catastrophic event, but the event that kind of could really interrupt service or require more costs than necessary if we can be more proactive about it and do preventative maintenance. So you see again, 87.9 million this current fiscal year, 76.6 in the projected in 2017. There was one change, if you recall. We worked with working with the finance director, also with utilities director and the city attorney. We're changing the way we do some of our contracts because, as I mentioned before, like we did this year, we booked the entire expense for the fire station. We know with the utilities' large capital projects, they are multi-year, but you have to book the entire expense in year one.
Right.
So now we're entering in, like you did with the fire station contract. It's now a multi-year contract, and we identify what the projected expenses are in year one. In that case, it'll be a 2-year this current fiscal year, next year. But in some of these capital projects that Jack's department works on, they are multi-year by nature. And to book that expense all at the one time, kind of, I don't want to say it inflates the budget, but just because it's going to take 3 years or 2 years maybe to get those projects done. So now we've structured them so we can true up what the needs are for the actual utility. Again, water, sewer, you can see capital and operating, they dominate their budget because in operating, it's tools, it's equipment, it's chemicals, it's the electricity. The electricity bill to run dials, it's up there pretty high, as well as cellars and.
Go solar.
Go solar. Maybe an opportunity to explore, sir.
Yes.
But salaries and benefits compared to the general fund, you can see 17.6%, and we have a large number of our employees that work in water and sewer. The stormwater budget, it's, besides the small amount of salaries and benefits, it's operating and capital. It's $2.8 million this year proposed versus the 2.7. It's about a 2.5% increase. This is just the general overview of the capital program. I won't go over every item. I'll probably just pick out a couple. Like you see the $2.5 million bottom line public works infrastructure. That's the investment in our roadways, the fixed boulevard, the additional funding for pavement management and maintenance, sidewalks, things of that nature there where we're have been deferred. But we have made some judicious decisions in the last couple of years to try to increase that funding. If you recall, we had a workshop with the engineers that did the analysis of our pavement conditions, and so we're trying to put some additional funds in there so we can, and there is that maintenance and depreciation curve, so we can try to get ahead of it. We're not going to completely get ahead of it, but at least we'll be in a better position. Yes, sir.
On the police, the machinery and equipment, were we buying $493,000 for the cars?
Well, what's that?
what are we buying for $493,000?
I'm going to pull up budget specifically.
Well, no, I mean,
I don't
you
have
know,
that memory.
they can't be buying cars because we.
Well, no, but there, you know, anything over a value of $30,000, you know, is in machinery and equipment. So I can, you just give me.
I'm just curious if we're buying for $493, if it's something they need, that's fine.
Cameras,
Cameron,
pistols, weapons.
In your budget
you
book,
need a
it's
widescreen
back.
TV in your office there, Mike?
We are, for this year, we actually are replacing, you know, one
Which page do you
vehicle.
want?
Yeah, sorry. One vehicle plus, this is the last year, should bring about, for the P25 project. That's the digital upgrade to our 800 megahertz system. If you recall, FEMA, and I think it was Department of Homeland Security, required that by January 1st, that we put a new radio system in so we can communicate and have interoperability. So right now, within the county, we can communicate amongst agencies. But in the event of a natural or man-made disaster, there's the need to communicate beyond just our borders. If we needed to communicate with Florida Fish and Wildlife, with FDOT and maybe their commercial
That's fine.
policing.
As long as I
So
get-
this is the fourth, over the last 3 years, we've been, each
So
year.
we have to
a
change
chunk.
all the radios in the cars
Well,
again?
actually, we've been doing that. This is the last year, and we will be there by January 1st. The
Oh, that's
largest
fine.
expense
That's fine.
is
I have no
consoles in the communication center. We've already rebuilt the
You did a
communication
good job
center.
with that communication.
So, and now that we'll be buying consoles
Like,
to
I
put
wasn't
in there.
picking on you, I was just trying to figure out what that money was going for.
Too late.
But, it's late. Thanks, Mike, for your back.
What friends are for?
Thank you, I'm satisfied.
And then, the water sewer, you can see there, infrastructure, $19.3 million in just infrastructure, $2.1 million in machinery, equipment, software. I mean, you all have been out at the control center, and there were the SCADA and all it's a technology-driven, you know, system these days. It's not the way that a lot of, you know, go out to the pump, turn it, you know, now what they're doing with SCADA is amazing in terms of the operator sitting behind a console, being able to, you know, adjust and accommodate the needs of the system. And so the total capital budget is $22.5 million. Other funds, capital projects, you see that 6.660 is, put that in there, 6.660. That is actual capital related to the fire stations. There's about another $1.3 million budgeted in the capital for the operating component in terms of engineering and other stuff that doesn't fall under under the building. It's maybe the furniture, fixture, equipment, things of that nature.
Let me ask a question.
Yes, sir.
When the construction of the fire stations take place, radio equipment, will we receive new, are they required to be upgraded to, as like the police department, identical?
It's in their budget. Matter of fact, you know, I skipped it, but you see the $87,000 there?
Mhm.
That's for them. Well, and there's actually a vehicle in there as well, but they have been upgrading as well, all their mobile and their handheld units.
So
They are everybody's on the same schedule, so we did it over 4 years, so we don't have to, you know, if we waited, we have to replace, and say they all hit a service life, and you don't want to replace them all at the same time, so we did over a 4-year period. And so they are doing the same thing.
Thank you.
So then you see the stormwater fund, out of their $2.8 million, $1.7 million total related to capital. And then these are the items that we discussed at the last budget workshop, in terms of they've been added to the budget or refined in the budget. The public bus shelters, you know, looking at it's about $15,000. And then these are the strategic issues, as you know. As somebody once said, it's going to stick with that plan. In those, crime, public safety, image, community development, economic development, fiscal sustainability. So the community project fund, that's the $500 projects that Peter Kajiyama encouraged us to do. You know, have 5 of them budgeted and try to get one and get the community engaged. The dog park, traffic signal, electric art box, our art project, wrapping those traffic signals with something other than the graffiti that exists on them.
Hallelujah.
Site prep and master planning for the mobile homes, the former Oaks mobile home site. The feasibility study related to a public-private partnership and the building of a parking garage. The Endeavor Elementary Community School Partnership, and then the Enterprise Resources, the ERP, that's kind of the brains, the software, doing that study to find out what best serves the needs of the city. And then the changes to the stormwater drain education campaign. If you recall that Ms. Koss came before council and asked if we could do something along those lines. So this is responding, and it certainly fits in, not just image, but it's also probably from a financial sustainability, because we're managing those resources, those capital resources, and encouraging people to be responsible with their stormwater. So with that, I'll return to council for any comments and questions. And at this point of the hearing, again, it's for public hearing item number 2B. You know, it's the first public hearing for the 2017 tentative budget and CIP. The requested action is to approve resolution number 2016-93, tentatively adopting a budget and a CIP for the city of Cocoa for fiscal year commencing on October 1st, 2016, and ending on September 30th, 2017. Turn to Mayor and Council.
John, did we, I know you didn't show it all, but I was just looking at the budget, but the Jolie Smith, did we add anything to it this year?
Yes, actually, we do have funds budgeted in there, and we are going to be doing, if you recall, the request from Diamond Square Redevelopment Agency, you know, that's their project, came out of their plan, and we'll enter into a municipal services agreement for them to do the design, the engineering, as well as, it was that, as well as the 4 Habitat for Humanity homes. Those funds are budgeted. On the city side, there's the Regina Myra subdivision, completing that in the Diamond Square. And then we will, out of the the fund balance, we will assign the monies related to the Stone Street streetscape. That will be, when the audit comes around, we'll assign those funds when we have to report that.
Okay, and on the parking structure, we're doing a study.
What's that?
We're doing a study on the parking structure.
One, we'll probably look to who helped us previously. You know, we'll get proposals, see if they, you know, they might be in a better position. But look at the demand, look at, you know, what are the opportunities for public-private partnerships.
Yep.
It's a tool a lot of communities are using to get some infrastructure projects. It's not a one-size-fit-all tool. Doesn't mean that it's going to be the best fit for the city of Cocoa, but we owe it to see if there's a potential private partner out there on a project of that nature, because you're talking about $5 million. As you know, last year we had $3 million appropriated in the legislature. Year before, $2.5 million, and both years the governor vetoed those funds, notwithstanding the support from Cocoa Village Playhouse, all the tourism and the numbers that we provided for the economic impact, you know, that would have for the city and for the region. So we need to look at, if we're not going to get any assistance, you know, we're certainly hopeful, working with a delegation in the upcoming year. I would recommend that we continue to pursue that and give it another shot. But we need to look at other opportunities, and it might be through a public-private partnership in terms of maybe we provide the land and they build, and it just, we have to kind of think outside the box, because that is a big nut to crack. $5 million,
that's a lot of
if not more, maybe 5.5,
Yeah.
6.
Hopefully not. Also, the connector, like the Lee Winter Park stuff, the connector and the.
That is in the CRA budget, the Lee Winter Park connector, and they are also unable to get the engineering completed this year for the day slips, so we are budgeting, the CRA has approved a budget that includes both the engineering and the construction for the day slips in this budget.
Okay.
To be completed next year.
I'm glad you got this off the cuff, that's good. Fisk will be completed when?
Well, we're doing part of Fisk right now, as you know, and in the upcoming year, there are funds to do, in this budget, to do from Peachtree Street to 520 to enhance that pedestrian connectivity, and the safety, and then also to do the study the designing engineering from Highland down to Peachtree, because remember, that's the area that doesn't have the sidewalks, doesn't have the drainage.
Right.
And there's also funds in here to upgrade lighting on Peachtree.
Good, that's good.
I'm Fisk, sorry. Thank you.
Fisk, yeah, right.
Thank you, Fisk.
Peachtree's got it.
Peachtree's
That's
got it,
good,
yes.
yeah. Okay, and then, north end, just, like, again, off the cuff, the FDOT on the port project out there, they're gonna come in and four-lane that, right?
Well, I don't know if they're going to four-lane
Did
it.
it require money from us, is what I'm asking you?
No, at this point in time, one, it's a state facility.
Right.
But what, the
Okay, we don't know.
Walmart is working with FDOT to determine what the needs are based on the traffic impact.
Right.
And that being said, I mean, in your budget, we have, I think, it's $1 million projected for this year to go towards that an economic incentive project. If you recall, we're breaking it down into the $2 million cash incentive,
Yep.
$500,000 once you get permits, $500,000 once you complete site work, and then we believe that'll happen in the next fiscal year. And then in the following fiscal year, you'll be getting the vertical construction, and then you'll be getting your ship date, or, they'll get the CO, and then they get their ship date where they're actually moving product, and that goes on the tax rolls. So, but they are actively, we've been in communication with them recently. I mean, just last week, there was an exchange on emails between staff and the Walmart representatives and the site selectors about what's required in terms of now looking at the development order and what needs to happen in terms of amending that. So that project is still moving forward.
That's good. Okay, and I just get a lot of questions about traffic. People are worried about traffic on I-24, so, okay, that's good.
And I know, and I'll share this, I know this, the TPO currently has, they're doing a study.
Yes, the TPO is not doing the study. It's DOT is doing a corridor study right now, 524. We just went through the project priorities. The State Road 524 is a regionally significant project, and it's on the TPO's list. It's behind St. John's Heritage Parkway and a few others, but it is on the list.
Right.
And it is budgeted for PD&E and FY19. So
Wow.
things took a little while with FDOT, but it is on the list.
good.
Clear Lake Road extension is a little bit ahead of it. It's
Oh, it is.
designed now, so they're moving.
They're moving.
Yeah.
That's gonna change dramatically out there.
Yeah.
Gee. Okay,
And I just probably need to add one more thing, Mr. Mayor.
yeah.
I know 240-plus pages of a budget here. And there are a couple things that you'll notice as you review this budget compared to your proposed budget that was originally presented. There were some changes made where, I've already presented some, but there was also a couple things where instances we found based on, maybe putting certain expenses in different account items. We booked it in one account number, and then we moved it here, and we're like, I'll take the PD. We booked for their investigative funds. We
Right.
booked it in two accounts. So we backed out, we'll be backing it out of one. And there's probably about 4 or 5 instances where we had the double booking and through, so we're correcting those.
Okay.
Just letting you know that, so you'll see, if you go in there, you're like, well, why is this here twice? You won't find it in here now because we've made those we'll be making those adjustments.
Okay. Okay.
And then you're
Public hearing
public
again?
comment, public hearing.
Yep.
Public hearing.
I guess we'll go to it.
I'll stay in case of any questions.
All right. Again, we'll close this to council, go to the public. Jerry, anybody like to speak on this?
John, you're ready, right?
If there's any questions, I'm ready.
No, I
Yeah.
think we're good. No. Okay, we'll close it to the audience, bring it back to council. How do you want to handle this?
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2016-93, tentatively adopting the budget in the CIP for the great city of Cocoa for the fiscal year commencing October 1st, 2016, and ending on September the 30th, 2017.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Is everybody within budget this year?
I'm sorry?
Is everyone within budget this year?
Yes, I mean, I would say everybody's doing a really excellent job, and we've had some, as Mike indicated, you know, we've had some unanticipated expenses, whether it be related to operations or equipment failure, but generally speaking, I think all the directors do a
Give me
very...
the last 3-4 years, so.
I would like to, if you have any, as you review this, if you have any changes, and I know you're looking forward to review all 242 pages again, if you have any changes, we will be advertising this proposed budget for the second and final hearing, which is, again, second public hearing, final hearing, September 14th, 6 o'clock here, Cocoa City Hall, 65 Stone Street, Cocoa, Florida. And at that hearing next week, we'll be adopting the final millage rate and adopting the final FY 2017 budget. So on behalf of staff, I want to thank, council for your collaborative environment in which we work and the leadership that you provide to staff, and it's certainly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Good job by the staff.
Good job by the staff.
Probably the
Yeah.
easiest
Great
budget
Great job.
process I've been through.
Good job by the
What'd you say, Brenda?
staff.
It's probably the easiest as far as understanding and planning.
Yeah.
This was probably the easiest. I mean, I'm using Mr. Burton's model, and then, with what the staff put together, this was a really, to me, this was a really easy budget year,
Thanks, Terry.
as far as the planning and everything went, so.
Okay, anybody want to say anything before we shut her down?
Due to the holiday yesterday, the agenda, we will try to have it out tomorrow afternoon, but it may be Thursday.
Okay.
We still have some items out there, so, just so you know.
John, anybody want to say anything?
No.
Florida State one? Okay.
Remind everybody that Thursday is the Mayor's Community Summit. I'm engaging the community, and creating a safer community.
6
o'clock,
p.m.
right?
6 o'clock,
Civic Center.
Civic Center.
Let's share ideas. And,
I will be there.
I got TPO meeting, so I don't know if I'll be there. No.
okay, so we're going to, in a motion to shut her down?
Okay, motion adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Whoa, somebody got.